Spider-Man's fighting the Avengers, and the ending of this story is gonna blow your minds. It's amazing, check this out. So what this does is this initially picks up with Spider-Man being confronted by the Avengers. Now, one thing I wanna specify here, this is the All Out Avengers miniseries. We already covered the Doctor Doom one. You'll find a link to it pinned in the comments section. This one and the Doctor Doom one are the only good ones, so that's why we're only covering those. The other ones are, they're okay. But what Peter Parker talks about here is how the Avengers' minds are being controlled by a person called the Grand Manipulator. Now, the overarching theme when it came to All Out Avengers is that someone somewhere was doing something that was changing reality itself. We didn't fully understand what was going on, but it was changing things, right? So that's why in the Doctor Doom one, you basically had Doom who was split into two versions, the super evil one, and then just like the good Doom. And then when they remerged, we got normal Doctor Doom again. Peter Parker picked up on that. But what's going on here is that things have suddenly shifted because Peter picked up on the idea of the Grand Manipulator and basically the person pulling the strings here. And so what's kind of funny here is that each of these groups acts fairly normal. The only person that seems a little off here is Thor, and it's kind of intriguing because, of course, when he greets Peter Parker, it's just like, Spider-Man, give us the contraption. If your friend deactivates it improperly, it'll scramble the minds of every person in New York City, including yours. I like your mind. It is amusing, sometimes annoying, but mostly amusing. But by and large, what Peter's talking about here and what Thor's talking about here, there was a device that was created that would basically undo the mind control of seemingly all the Avengers here. And of course, there's a scientist that Peter's working with in order to solve that problem. The issue here is that with the Avengers trying to get their hands on it, they immediately attack him. Now, of course, Iron Man's the first one up, and Peter Parker takes out Iron Man like that in the blink of an eye. Now, here's one of the things that I love about this comic. Peter Parker is arguably one of the most slept-on characters in Marvel Comics. In popularity, yes, he's the face of Marvel, right? You'd have to leave the planet Earth to find someone or an alien race that's never heard of Peter Parker. And even then, there's probably aliens out there that are reading Spider-Man comics, right? He's just that level of popular. But in terms of what he's capable of, this guy is an absolute hoss. And it's all because of his spider sense combined with his intelligence. And so when Iron Man steps up, Peter's able to take him out because remember, ever since the events of Civil War, Peter has had a grand understanding of how Stark tech works, how his suit works, because Tony Stark gave Peter Parker an Iron Man suit of his own, the Iron Spider suit. And so, of course, following the defeat of Iron Man, or at least the temporary deactivation of Iron Man's suit, Jennifer Walters steps in. Who cares? So after Jennifer Walters ends up coming Carol Danvers, right? Now, the Carol Danvers fight is an interesting one because, truth to tell, I would never argue that Peter Parker could normally overtake Carol Danvers in a knockdown, drag-out, hand-to-hand fight. It's just not gonna happen. His spider sense would allow him to like bob and weave and dodge, but he just doesn't necessarily have the actual ability to overtake and to defeat Carol Danvers. And that's why what he does here is he actually just keeps her at bay. He ends up slipping a pill in her mouth that actually just kind of spurs out a bit of webbing that temporarily incapacitates her, right? Like literally leaves her choking. Now he says it'll dissolve in 60 seconds, which doesn't do much help because you could suffocate in less time than that. So Peter Parker potentially just killed Carol Danvers, which is kind of a crazy thing. But once he makes his way into a building, what he ends up doing is coming face to face with Blade. Now, this is a fight that you rarely ever get to see, and I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. We're probably not gonna get it, but I wanna see a fight between Spider-Man and Blade in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So here's a question that I have for you guys, right? Leaving out the plot necessity of this story for Peter Parker to overpower Blade in a knockdown, drag-out fight where there is no pre-written conclusion, right? We won't actually know how it ends. Who do you think would win in a fight between Spider-Man and Blade? Who do you think would really win? Like, I'm really curious, because honestly, my money's on Blade. But of course, Peter Parker ends up getting the upper hand on Blade himself. What ends up happening is that when Peter Parker starts to get the upper hand on him, Black Panther jumps in, right? T'Challa jumps in. Now, what's disappointing about this is we don't actually get to see a prolonged fight between Spider-Man and Black Panther, because that would have been amazing. But the reality here is that even though Black Panther is able to momentarily gain the upper hand, Peter Parker, of course, is able to bob and weave, dodge out of the attack, and then he's ultimately caught up to by Captain America. Now, of course, once he throws one of his webbing grenades, right, and like incapacitates the entire team, he again takes off, and that's when he's caught up to by Thor. But with Thor getting a piece of his shirt, Peter Parker's able to make his escape and then kind of take off and go into hiding. Now, this is kind of a cool moment because one of the things to remember is that they all have to rely on their naked eye in order to find Peter Parker. And so, of course, he basically jumps forward, right? He's ultimately caught up to by Iron Man yet again. And we get a little bit of a solution here in finding out that the way Peter was able to take down Iron Man's suit was by using a bit of a disc. And so ultimately he's instructed, right? Like, hand over the resequencer. You have no idea what's gonna happen if he activate this thing, which he gladly does. And that's when the Avengers realize it all happened too quickly. Now, the undercurrent here and the thing that's not actually established, and this is something that I love, Peter Parker literally says he just kind of led them on a merry chase, which really indicates that Peter Parker actually gave these guys the benefit of the doubt. He wasn't really even going all in. And what this really points to is the idea that if Peter Parker were fighting against the Avengers and he were fighting to kill, he would destroy them all. And there's actually merit to this, right? There is a legitimate story where this more or less happened. It's an alternate reality story and the circumstances were a little bit different. We covered it. You'll find a link to it down in the comments, although, yeah, I'm pretty sure we remastered it. That is a story where Peter Parker basically kills the Marvel Universe. It was amazing. It focuses largely around Punisher in the aftermath of it all, but it's cool. It's a really, really cool story. Like Iron Man dies in his suit shuts down, so he's trapped in it and he can't get out and he just starves to death or dies of dehydration, but it's like he was screaming in his suit for 3 days and nobody could get him out, like that kind of a thing. It's kind of wild. There have been credible stories out there where Spider-Man has demonstrated the ability to take out the entirety of the Avengers. The other part of this is that the reason he led him on a merry chase is because he was basically just buying time. He already gave the resequencer, the real resequencer, to the Grand Manipulator. He already has it. And by the time the Avengers figure it out and by the time they get there, the resequencer's already been activated and everything just kind of goes back to normal. But here's the funny thing about this. Once they get in there, they all feel like their normal selves. They all feel like things are just the same way they always were. Nothing feels like it's wrong. And so what Iron Man does is that in the middle of this whole fight, he was downloading video footage throughout the city and having his suit automatically filter through to find specific points in time. And he presents this data to basically the entirety of the Avengers team as it exists there. Now, in one of the previous videos that had happened, basically Spider-Man had seemed to succumb to some kind of mind control, but so did the Avengers. It's not a really important thing, but it's a little bit of a thing there. What this video footage basically shows is they were both mind controlled. Both groups were being mind controlled at the same time. More so than that, whatever was going on here with this person's ability to manipulate reality, what they were doing is they were altering the time stream at the same time. So you basically had two versions of reality happening simultaneously. Now, once they realized they had all been tricked, that it was a giant ruse where they had all been duped, that's when they end up figuring out that the Grand Manipulator is none other than the scientist, Dr. Samuel Crassus, that Peter Parker's been working with and handing the resonator over to. Now, the funny thing about this is that when Peter asks him, "Are you the Grand Manipulator?" his response is, "I tear reality asunder." Right now, right off the bat, that should tell you what's going on here and who this person is. But again, the ending of this is gonna be crazy. So what ends up happening here is that once they start to realize they'd all been tricked and the Grand Manipulator was this doctor, well, then we get a bit of just convenience, right? Like kind of convenient storytelling where Peter's like, actually, here's the thing. I didn't fully trust you in the first place, and so I made a few changes to this whole resequencer, and basically it wipes this guy out of existence, or at the very least, it just kind of seems to destroy his essence, right? So he's just kind of a husk laying there. He's basically dead, right? Peter Parker kills this guy. And it's kind of a funny thing because this happens just for the sake of being able to wrap up the story, not the most important thing, but what is important is the voiceover that we get, the monologue that we get, right? This voice says, "That worked out rather well, I think. They were just getting a little too close. I need them to figure it out. Sure, but on my time. Jumping ahead of my schedule could ruin everything. But I think this will do it. I just have to be more careful in the future, more subtle. These are smart people, after all, for humans." And so we transition over to Captain America. Now, here's the thing. Captain America is oftentimes, his intelligence is oftentimes overlooked. He's exceedingly capable. So this highlights just how smart Captain America is, right? He says, "Hello." He walks into an empty room and he says, "Hello." And he says, "I know you're there. I can't see you, but sometimes I think I can feel you. I know you're watching." This was clever, giving us a bad guy, a new villain who can take all the blame for everything that's happened. You couldn't have us asking too many more questions, could you? Who knows where all that speculation might have led us? So you gave us the Grand Manipulator, and immediately the possibilities narrowed. But it was too little, too late. You'd already made your mistakes. Why was that? The more it went on, the more you had to change, the harder it was to maintain control. Is that it? Or did you just get sloppy? You're listening to me, you're paying attention. If I were Emma Frost or Charles Xavier, I might even be able to see you right now. But I don't need psychic powers to recognize your power. And I'm coming for you, Beyonder. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Beyonder is back in Marvel comics. He's technically been back since Defenders Beyond, but we didn't know where he went to. He's manipulating everything behind the scenes because remember, what Defenders Beyond established is that there is a threat out there that is more powerful than the one above all, more powerful than God, and it's coming, and it's only a matter of time before it gets here. What the Beyonder seems like he's doing is manipulating things to prepare the superheroes, to get them ready for this insanely powerful threat, which honestly, I don't even know how Avengers on a singular Earth defeat a being more powerful than the being who created everything in existence. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.